Hey guys, welcome back to part two of the Civil War presentation. Today we're going to start with border states. Yesterday we got into the war. We got Fort Sumter out of the way. Now we're going to talk about some statistical kind of things and some advantages and disadvantages. Let's get started. When we're talking about border states, we're talking about Missouri, Kentucky, eventually West Virginia, Delaware, and Maryland. And all of these are going to be slave states that do not secede from the Union. They stay part of the Union. Lincoln, on his part, has to continually say, partially, I think, because he believes it, but partially for the benefit of those states, that this war is not about slavery. It's about preserving the Union. Not about slavery, preserving the Union. Not about slavery, preserving the Union. Because if it becomes about slavery, he loses Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, Delaware, and West Virginia. Here's the map, and you can see the green is going to be the southern states that secede. The tannish, beige, brown, whatever color there is going to be territories. The yellow is going to be northern states, free states. The orange and this dark brown are going to be slave states that are a part of the Union. Blue is water. So these states right here, in particular West Virginia, is an interesting story. West Virginia basically says that Virginia, when they left the Union, left West Virginia. They argue this, they end up getting the right to make their own state, and instead of calling it something epic like Adertonia, they call it West Virginia, even though it's northwest of Virginia. You can see it's kind of similar, but you can also see if these were all yellow, they would look kind of similar in balance just right here, not counting California or Oregon. But if you took these orange and brown and added them to the South, this looks like a big advantage for the South. So these are going to be super important for the North. And you can also see here's Richmond and here's Washington, D.C. Now, one of the things that I haven't really gone in depth on is Native Americans. And I talk about Native Americans as if they're one group, but they're actually several different groups. And you guys know this. You have the Cherokee, you've got the Osage, you've got all these different groups of Indians that we just end up lumping into this group called Native Americans. These Native American tribes are going to largely back the groups that are similar to them. So the 5 civilized tribes in Oklahoma side with the Confederacy because often they own slaves. And I say civilized with quotes because by saying that these are just the 5 civilized tribes, that means that all the other tribes aren't civilized, but they are. That's just what they're called. The others, including a faction of these Cherokees, are going to side with the Union because they don't own slaves and their ideas align more with the North. So here are some advantages and disadvantages. So we have on the left here, these are all for the North, the manufacturing ability, the transportation, money, the Navy, more people in the North, also more people coming into the North by immigration. Just note that if someone has an advantage, that means the other side inherently has to have a disadvantage in the same category. So if money is an advantage for the North, that means that the South has to be at a disadvantage in money. Northern disadvantages, they have to invade. And I've talked about the supply chains lengthening, stretching out, and it causes more problems for getting supplies, getting people to places. And the supply chains can be attacked and they can have things taken. Northerners aren't as prepared to fight. The Southerners have been out. A lot of them have been fighting in wars with Mexico relatively recently. And there are fewer qualified military leaders. A lot of those are already in the South. Now, the South has some advantages as well. They could fight a defensive war. They don't have to win the war. They just have to not lose. An example of this is because a lot of students are like, isn't that the same thing? Not really. The example I give is arm wrestling. If somebody came up and said, Mr. Rader, I see you've got some candy on your desk. Can I have some of that candy? And I say, no. And they say, what about we arm wrestle? And if I win, I get your candy. And I say, okay. that student has one chance to win the candy, and that is if they beat me at arm wrestling. If I win at arm wrestling, I get to keep the candy. Or if we both just kind of sit there and we can't do anything and we just give up, it's still my candy. I still win. That's what this is. They don't have to win. They just have to not lose. They can have that just holding right here until finally they're like, okay, we're just going to give up. We're just going to stop. At least at the beginning, you're going to see morale. We're going to see that today. The South is very excited for their war. We're going to see that in the next PowerPoint. And the South has the most talented military officers and the rebel yell. The rebel yell is one of those things that Northerners, we would call it post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They write about it, how they'll wake up in a cold sweat because they have this nightmare of the South or a group of Southern soldiers attacking and giving out this rebel yell. The South doesn't have factories to produce weapons. They don't have transportation, and they are dependent on cotton. We're going to look at some of that stuff now. You can see almost 7-3 in population, money 8-2, factories 85 to 15%-ish. Now, these are all kind of estimates. Now, the South does have the North whipped in cotton production, 99.9 compared to 0.1. Unfortunately, you cannot eat or make weapons or ammunition out of cotton. Food crops, 72 to 28%. Horses, 72 to 28%. The South does have more donkeys and mules. Horses are going to be a faster mode of transportation. Donkeys and mules are going to be more of your beasts of burden or your pack animals that are carrying supplies. They don't really need those in the North because they have railroad tracks. Here's the population in 1861. You can see 98% white in the North compared to 66% white in the South. A third of all people in the South in 1861 are African American, most of those slave, compared to 1% African American in the North and 1% other. A lot of that 1% is going to be your immigrants, maybe from China, in California, and things like that. Here's the railroads, and you can almost see the line between North and South just in the railroad tracks. You can see basically this railroad track here kind of cuts off the two. Remember, Kentucky is a slave state, but they fight with the North, but you can see how little railroad tracks we have starting with the slave states. Resources. The North has 1.3 million workers compared to 110,000 workers in the South. And this is amazing to me. The South has 110,000 workers. The North has 110,000 factories. That means for every one factory worker we have in the South, there's going to be one factory we have in the North. That's crazy. The value of goods produced, 1.5 billion to 155 million, almost 10 times as much things produced. Railroad tracks, we saw 70-30. I think it was 72-28 in the last one. So these are estimates again. Textiles, where you can use that cotton to make things. There's 17 textiles in the North for every one in the South. 32 guns in the North to one gun in the South. And ways to make steel, 20-1 for the North. Number of people present for duty in the Civil War. The blue is Union, green is Confederate. Everything that we're looking at just screams the North is going to win. That's right. It's going to take a long time, though. Your political leadership. In the North, you have Abraham Lincoln and his vice president, Hannibal Hamlin. Lincoln steps into a country that's been there for a long time. Like, people know about it. It's not new. He can make people think the way he wants them to think by kind of guiding them in his speeches and in his discourse. He's also kind of nice to the South. He basically says the South isn't bad. The South isn't a bunch of just no good people. He kind of compares them to a kid that's throwing a fit We're going to love them, their family, and when they're done with this, we're going to accept them back in, we're going to welcome them, and they're going to be part of the family again. As soon as he takes power, though, he does a couple of things that I want to point out. Suspends the right of a person to not just be arrested and thrown in jail. That's the writ of habeas corpus. Literally something that is in the Constitution to keep people from just being thrown in jail for weeks, months, years, and never have any kind of trial, never be told why they're thrown in jail. He says, yeah, we're not doing that. If I want you in jail, I'll put you in jail. Also, suspension of certain newspapers. Again, we have freedom of the press. And he says, yeah, we're not doing that. You start writing bad stuff about us, you're done. And arresting editors for writing anti-union things. Something he can't do according to the Constitution. While the South is out of Congress, the Congress is going to do a few things. Each one of these is going to help the North. It's not necessarily going to hurt the South, but it is absolutely going to help the North. For the Confederacy, we have Jefferson Davis and Alexander Stephens, and they have a little bit of a problem. See, Davis wants a strong government, but that's what the South is trying to get away from. He keeps trying to get the states to help each other out, but the states are looking out for themselves. They're not worried about the country. Sometimes he is super popular, but other times there's people that want him out of office. Like now, yesterday. If somebody has a dumb opinion, Jefferson Davis will basically say, no, it's a dumb opinion. He looks at the minutia, he looks at the little things and kind of leaves the big things alone, which you can't really do that in a war, especially. People don't know about it. Like, it's new. Other countries don't know about the Confederate States of America, and he doesn't have a lot of money. Like, not just him, but like the country in and of itself doesn't have a lot of money. Guys, that's the end of part 2. In the next video, we'll get into military leadership and the first actual death battles in the Civil War. Hope to see you then. Goodbye.